Thank you for joining us for another Wednesdays in the Word, and so glad that you can be with us today. We're going to continue in our study, Heaven and Hell, but now we're going to shift our study from the hell element to the heaven element. And really felt that we had to spend a number of lessons dealing with hell because definitely believe that is going to be the dividing point for many unbelievers or even some marginal Christians as we go deeper into the 21st century. There are a number of people that have an issue with a holy and gracious, loving God that may send people to a burning hell. And so just really believe that I had to address those issues, and hopefully it gave you the information, it gave you the theology on it so that you're able to articulate it and share it if you are challenged on this issue. So in this video, we're going to shift to the heaven side, and we'll spend about 3 or 4 videos talking about heaven. And so in this video, we want to raise the question, what will heaven be like? And so thank you for joining us, and really looking forward to this study now as we shift to heaven, and really excited. What I want to do, just by way of overview, just to kind of let you know where we're going in this video. First, I want to just share some statistics about what people believe about heaven and hell, and kind of let us see how at least the country falls. And then I'll share some scriptures. And then we'll talk about just a few misconceptions. Won't spend a lot of time there. And then I just want to give you just some observations as to what heaven may possibly be like. And really just at the forefront here, I just want to say it's really hard to nail down or pin down exactly what heaven will be like. I am going to do another video after this video, and I want to encourage you to definitely connect with that video, and that'll deal with the kingdom in heaven. I think you'll get even a broader picture there. But the scriptures just don't really go into grand detail about what will heaven be like. Definitely presents a picture that there is this place called heaven. But in terms of really specific, concrete detail as to exactly what it's like, you're really hard pressed. And many who claim to are able to say what it's like really are kind of imagining. But I'll share some thoughts here just to give us a sense of what that will be like. Some statistics just on the issue of heaven and hell and kind of where the country falls. And really this doesn't, I guess it gets a little bit of belief, but I just thought it was interesting. These statistics are as of November 2021. And so 73% of Americans believe in a heaven, while 62% believe in a hell. 92% of Christians believe in heaven, where only 79% of Christians actually believe in hell, which I think is interesting. You believe on the one hand that there is a heaven, but you don't believe in the logical opposite. So I just thought that statistic was interesting. 96% of evangelicals, and these are evangelical Christians, don't think politically, but evangelicals tend to hold the scriptures as God's finality of the Word of God. They believe in the deity of Christ, the substitutionary nature of the atonement, and they hold to the orthodox positions of the Christian faith. So 96% of evangelicals believe in heaven. 90% of Catholics believe in heaven. So I thought that was interesting. 91% of evangelicals believe in hell, but 74% of Catholics believe in hell. Interestingly, 26% of the religiously unaffiliated believe in heaven. These are individuals who would say they don't identify or connect with any kind of religion. And then lastly, and surely not least, 3% of atheists actually believe in a heaven. Not sure how they arrive at that conclusion considering their belief system, but that is true. So just some scriptures, just some statistics in terms of where people fall in the continuum on this issue of heaven and hell. some scriptures, and there are plenty of scriptures that would suggest some kind of afterlife, that as soon as we die, Christians immediately go into the presence of God. That element is pretty abundant. Now, there are those that would interpret that differently, but I think they're hard pressed to see it differently. I don't differ on that, and when I talk about misconceptions, I'll explain how they get to that. It's not that far out of the realm, but it seems to be clear the biblical authors, and especially Jesus, understood that once we die, there's this place called heaven that saints or Christians go to. You can see Luke chapter 23, verse 43, where Jesus is on the cross and the thief asks Jesus to remember him when he comes into his kingdom. And Jesus says this, "Truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise." So obviously there's an assumption that even though we're about to expire, we're about to die, but that we will be in a place called paradise, or as many has interpret that to mean heaven. 2 Corinthians 5:1, it says, "For we know if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in where? Heaven, not built with human hands." And so there again, Paul, as he talks about what happens using the tent or a building as a metaphor for our bodies, that tent will be destroyed, but we have a new building that we will live in heaven. And then 2 Corinthians 5:8 says this, "We are of good courage, I say, and prefer rather to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord." And so here again, absent from the body meaning death. There's some kind of afterlife. There is this experience of hell. And so of heaven. And so again, the scriptures, and there are many others, and I'm just giving you a few of that you can cling to, but there are many scriptures that would definitely indicate or point to some kind of afterlife when we die, some kind of heaven. And so that's where we want to land today. Now I want to turn our attention to some misconceptions about heaven. Just a few very quickly. Number one, that heaven is our final home. And by heaven, what they mean is that our souls will always be with God and our bodies will never reunite in some fashion. And here I think that's a misnomer. Though heaven is a place that we go when we die, the Bible clearly teaches a final resurrection where we will have resurrected bodies. Now, how the soul and the body will come back together, I have no idea how that whole piece is going to happen. But when Jesus returns, there's a sense that we will be restored, a restored humanity, which means in our current condition, but in a more spiritual physical sense, maybe not physical is the right word, but I'll say spiritual and resurrected sense, whatever the resurrection sense that Jesus was in, we will be in that experience or in that sense in the kingdom. And that's in my next video, the kingdom in heaven, and making sure we understand the distinction between the two. And so heaven as a Christian's final home, that's one misconception. The second one is that heaven will be boring. You know, many have this idea that, you know, we'll be sitting on clouds and we'll have harps and we'll just sing spiritual hymns and songs 24/7. And that's not quite the vision of heaven or even the final state that the scriptures present. It doesn't go into detail, as I said earlier, but that's not it. And I just completely reject that idea that heaven will be a boring place. As I've said over and over again in this series, what makes heaven heaven is God, his presence. And so it'll be a glorious experience. It'll be one of incredible awe, one that we can't possibly imagine. And then a final one is that this idea that we won't remember our earthly existence. And again, I'm going to constantly point you to the resurrected experience or body of Jesus Christ. When Jesus rose from the dead, he remembered everything. He actually ate. He ate food to prove that he was not this disembodied spirit. And whatever that is, that's what we will have. We will be like Jesus. That's why 1 John 3 says when we see him, we will be just like him. in every sense of the word that he was when he rose from the dead. That's what our kingdom experience shall be. And so he clearly was aware of what happened before. He clearly was aware of all that was going on, as well as what is planned for the future. And I definitely believe that we will have our memories intact. We'll understand, at least in a sense, what has happened in the past, and I think even in the present, in terms of where we will be in a different place. And so that is a misnomer. And then also too, I just want to raise this very quickly, as I mentioned, this idea of how some people may not see this heaven where your spirit goes. And that's because in the Old Testament, there's no dichotomy between spirit and flesh or spirit and body. That's more of a New Testament idea. That's something that came with the Greeks before the Romans conquered Israel, which is during the time of Jesus. But before that period, particularly if you go through the Old Testament, you're really hard pressed to find a dichotomy between spirit and flesh. Now, I know sometimes there's translations that of words and phrases in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Old Testament, that give you the impression that there's a heaven or an understanding of heaven in the Old Testament. But those are not the best translations. And there's a sense that those older translations kind of read in a more Protestant theology. The truth is, if you translate it in the way that the Jewish saints would have understood it, they really saw the body and the spirit as one. So when you went into the grave, you waited for the resurrection. Now, whether you were asleep, whether you were conscious, I don't know. And that was a mystery. But there's a sense that once you died, you were in the grave and you simply awaited for this new body. And there are many scholars that hold that position, that there is no place called heaven, but that one day God will kind of raise up all individuals, and those who were Christians will live in the kingdom. And so that's how they get there, because of this Old Testament idea. And so just want to make sure we clear that up in terms of just a few misconceptions. And so let me just give you some personal observations as to what we can learn about heaven from the scriptures. I think that's the best place to start. Number one, when you see the word heaven, particularly in the Old Testament, heaven is a simple reference to the literal sky. And so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The heavens would be the sky. We kind of read more into that in our modern world, but they would have understood the heavens simply to be the skies above, this idea of space or what have you. That just wasn't in their cosmology. They would have understood it as the sky. Number two, heaven was definitely believed to be the dwelling place of God. And so even though it was the sky, there's a sense above the sky. In some sense, that was the place where God dwelled. That's what his abode was. And here I'm going to land with some other individuals that sometimes we can make more of the place rather the God that makes the place. And sometimes I think Christians and even marginal Christians and non-believers really make the issue of being in a pleasant place as if God is not going to be there. And if that's the case, they've completely missed the point. No, it's the God of all creation. It's the God of eternity, the God that made all things. He is the one that makes heaven heaven. And so the reason why heaven is a wonderful place is because that is God's dwelling place. That is his abode. That's where he dwells. And from there he rules. Third thing I want you to know about heaven is that many times heaven is, at least in the Christian view, as it's interpreted, as I'm kind of taking that position, it's really an intermediate state. The way we've preached it in the Protestant church or in the American church is that heaven is the final state. And that's not quite true. When we do die, we do go to a place called heaven. At least our spirit, our soul goes to heaven. And the understanding is our body goes into the grave. But the Bible teaches, and again, this is in the next video that we'll talk about the kingdom. The Bible teaches that when Jesus comes back, he's going to restore the kingdom. And the kingdom is what the world was supposed to be from the beginning. And that's Genesis 2, Genesis 1 and 2. Before Adam and Eve ate of the fruit, we never saw the full vision of that garden experience. And so Revelation 21 and 22 is the fulfillment, the completion of that vision, where we will have some kind of resurrected body. We will have our souls in our bodies. In some sense, we will be restored back to the way God intended the world to be from the beginning. And God will dwell in our midst, just like family, just like individuals. It will be clear. It won't be mysterious. We'll be able to see him as he is, and it will be the ultimate human experience that God intended from the beginning. And so here, heaven is more of that temporary place when you die. But after heaven, when Jesus comes back, and we don't know when he's going to come back, he's going to restore all things. In John 14, he said, I'm going to go away and prepare a place for you. That's what I believe he's doing. He's going to restore all things and create the place that God intended from the beginning. And so heaven will be this renewed place. And so I want to read this scripture that kind of puts the finality on it, and it's Revelation 21, 1 through 4. And here's what it says. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. There it is. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people. There it is. We'll be able to see him as he is. No mystery, no guessing, no wondering. It'll be open, free, and unhindered, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. And so that's different from heaven. Heaven is the place where we await for this experience of the kingdom. But one day Jesus will return. He will judge all humanity, and then he will usher in this idyllic vision of what God intended from the beginning. We'll complete the vision that was started with Adam and Eve, and we will dwell with God without fear, without reservation, or without trepidation. And so those are my thoughts, just to kind of give you an intro as to what heaven is like. I'll get into more detail in our next video when we talk about heaven and the kingdom. I'll be looking for you, and hopefully and prayerfully this will encourage you. God bless you, and I'll look for you in the next video. Take care.